What's up, guys? It's Toad back again for NFL Week 18, the final week of the season. And this week is a total minefield where you have to gauge motivation, of course, because you have teams that have already clinched their playoff spots. You have teams that are certainly out of it. You got teams that are playing backups and a whole lot of chaos going on, and lines are moving all over the place. And unfortunately, the two plays that I'm going to give out here, the lines have moved a little bit, maybe not too much, but they've gone through like the key number 3, so that's kind of unfortunate, but I'll still give them out. I only took these lines like a day ago, but these lines are just moving like crazy. So I will talk about those. I'll talk about a bunch of the playoff scenarios, I guess. Last week, the NFL was not great for me. I guess it was, what was it, 1-0 and 1-1, right? Yeah, because I won easily on the New Orleans Saints. Yeah, hell yeah. Got the Saints one right, and the other games were unfortunate. The Colts wound up pushing the 3 because I got the 3, and the line had gone up to, I think, 4 by the time the game kicked off. So unfortunately for people that had bet Indy at the worst number, they wound up losing that bet, which is just ridiculous. Indy was winning by 10 late in the game. They were winning by double digits for much of that game. Probably a situation where they should have just covered because they were covering like most of the game wire to wire. And the fact that it pushed, I was angry about that. And then, of course, Miami just got absolutely steamrolled by the Baltimore Ravens, who are definitely for real. And I probably should not have bet that game. There were a lot of turnovers in that game too, but a lot of injuries decimating Miami. And I'm going to talk about Miami shortly. Oh boy, it's one of the biggest games of the week. It's going to be a really interesting game, and I actually have a play on that one. I can't help myself. I think it is one of the better spots. So let's go to this card, man. This is week 18 is always a really difficult card to break down. We got 2 Saturday games and then a whole slate of Sunday games after that. So the way the NFL sets this up is they put like the 2 Saturday games are kind of like the games that have those like wild card implications, where it's kind of like one particular team like will need to win, and then that kind of clinches one particular thing, and then that team like might need help later on. So like basically the NFL doesn't want these teams scoreboard watching. So in this case, the Steelers need to win and they need help. And then I believe that is also the case with the Indianapolis Colts, I believe, maybe, or at least to win the division, I think they need help. I don't even know what all the playoff scenarios specifically are, man. Even though I'm betting some of these games, it's just so crazy. How many different things can happen here? Like the Vikings can actually still somehow make the playoffs. It's just totally ridiculous. But the NFL basically doesn't want the Steelers, Texans, and Colts to all be scoreboard watching. Like they couldn't have a situation where the Jaguars are playing at the same time as the Texans, Colts, because I think if the Jaguars win, they win that division. I think, although maybe if the Texans win, then the Texans, I don't even know, man. But there's a lot going on. So the NFL doesn't want those games being played at the same time, though. So that's what's going on here. Steelers-Ravens is the late afternoon game on Saturday. Steelers look like they would have been a 3-point underdog. Maybe even more than that if we knew that if the Ravens had not locked up their playoff spot there. The Ravens have locked up the number 1 seed in the AFC and a bye. So the Ravens are not playing some of their starters in this game. So that's why the line has moved from the Steelers 3 as a 3-point underdog to a 3.5-point favorite. And of course, the Steelers need to win this game. So when you get into week 18, man, there's a lot going on here where you have teams that are resting all their starters. And yeah, generally, I don't think you want to be on teams that are doing that because they kind of have that like look ahead aspect to the playoffs. The Ravens kind of are in a sandwich spot, really, because they just came off that massive win, 2 massive wins over the 49ers, and then over the Dolphins. They basically have nothing left to prove now, but now they've clinched the 1 seed. They pretty much don't have anything to play for here, even though, yeah, the Steelers are their rival, but are the Ravens really going to be completely up for this game? Well, the Ravens are not playing Lamar Jackson. They're playing Huntley, I think, is their backup quarterback, but he's played for the Ravens a decent amount over the last few years because Lamar Jackson has been hurt multiple times, so Huntley has been in those games, so I think he's going to be the quarterback in this one. So he does know the system, so I don't think it's not like a gigantic downgrade to Huntley because he knows what he's doing there, and it's a heated rivalry, so the Ravens probably aren't just going to lie down, but still, they're coming off a couple huge wins, and they're already looking ahead to the playoffs. You got to think as well, man, even though I think when you have a bye, you don't really want to get cold either, though. So if I was the Ravens, I would actually maybe even play my starters for a little while. But of course, you have to balance that with not wanting your guys to get hurt. So I do think it's going to be Huntley starting the game in this one for the Ravens. The Steelers must win the game, though. They have to win, and I think they need either Buffalo or Jacksonville to lose to get into the playoffs. It's something to that effect. So the Steelers need to win, and they need help. And when you're in a must-win situation, though, I think that adds a lot of pressure onto you, even though the Steelers, under Mike Tomlin, like they understand the pressure, but they have Mason Rudolph at starting quarterback here. Does he understand that pressure? Has he been in like a huge pressure situation like that? I don't know if he has, maybe not to this degree, maybe. I don't know if he played any of those playoff games that the Steelers were in after like Roethlisberger was out of there, if they were in the playoffs at all. I'm not even sure. I don't know if Rudolph has played in a game as big as this, so I would question that. I still do have to lean to the Steelers here, though, because the Ravens have nothing to play for. They're coming off a couple huge wins, and they have the playoffs looming ahead next, so I still have to lean against the Ravens here, and the Ravens have 63% of the tickets, 54% of the cash, so it looks like the market is indicating on the Steelers a bit, but when you have all that pressure on you, man, and you're laying points, if you're in a must-win situation and you're an underdog, I kind of do like that because you know you're going to get a full effort from that team. But if you're laying points and you're kind of supposed to win that game, then it kind of puts pressure on that team, and I kind of don't want to be on that team anymore. So I can't quite do it with the Steelers, even though I do lean that way, just because the Ravens are packing it in a little bit and looking ahead to the playoffs. So that's the way I look at that. And then the night game, probably a much more entertaining game, really, I would say, because both teams need to win this game, the Texans and the Colts. This is the night game on Saturday. Texans have flipped from a 2.5-point underdog to a 1.5-point favorite. I think maybe some of when they were an underdog was because it was questionable whether C.J. Stroud was going to play or not back like a couple weeks ago, but he came back last week. So Stroud, he is going to play in this game for sure. He's playing, so the Texans are now a favorite on the road against the Colts. They have 76% of the tickets and 87% of the cash, so the cash discrepancy is on the Texans. Unfortunately, I kind of lean the Texans, and I know there are a bunch of professionals who are leaning that way as well, but it's not going to be a play for me, and I just think when you get to a point where both of these teams could potentially win the division, I actually think if the Texans win this game, they win the division, or I think if Jacksonville loses, then I think the Colts win the division because Jacksonville has a tiebreaker against the Colts. So I think the Colts need to win this game and need Jacksonville to lose because if they wind up with the same record, Jacksonville has the tiebreaker because they beat the Colts twice. They did not beat the Texans twice. I think they're 1-1 against each other. So I think the Texans actually have the tiebreaker against the Jaguars. So it's a whole crazy mess here where all three of those teams can still win the AFC South, but I think they can all also get a wild card, I believe, if things work out correctly. I think they can all still wind up in a wild card spot. It's just a crazy situation. We have three teams that could still potentially win the same division, or they could all still potentially wind up being a wild card if things work out in a certain way. I don't know if they all could simultaneously, but each one of them individually still have a chance to either win the division or be the wild card. So the Texans, the line is telling you that they're the better team here, and they did lose at home earlier in the season to the Colts, but I think there were a lot of turnovers in that game that helped out the Colts. I'm just not so sure the Texans are so much better than the Colts that they should be laying points on the road at the Colts. I'm not so sure about that. I think the teams are, I don't know, man. I don't know if I even have the Texans as the better team, to be honest, even though the market is definitely telling you that the Texans would be the side here, and it's road revenge, of course, for the Texans because they lost at home to the Colts. But I think you can throw road revenge, divisional road revenge out the window, and this is just the battle like for the playoffs, basically. And these teams need to win this game. Both of them do. So the pressure is going to be on. And then in a situation like that, I think experience does factor in, though, and the experience is more on the side of the Colts, man. C.J. Stroud, he's a rookie. He hasn't been in a game at this level. Yeah, this is like playoff atmosphere. So is that going to detract from the Texans a little bit? Maybe. I mean, we know that the cash discrepancy is on the Texans, but the public is also on the Texans because they love C.J. Stroud, and the Colts keep winning ugly, man. The Texans, I think they won like real easily last week and shut out the Titans, I think, or something like that, if I'm not mistaken, a blowout win, whereas the Colts didn't look that good against the Raiders and wound up pushing that number 3, even though the Colts were winning the whole game. The Colts, I think they just continue to kind of fly under the radar and be a little bit undervalued, though, man. Even though, like I said, I do slightly lean to the Texans here, just with where the professionals are and with where the cash discrepancy is. Unfortunately, because I am a fan of the Colts and I would love to see the Colts win this game, but the experience factor is on the side of the Colts, which is certainly why I can't bet this, because there are conflicting factors here, kind of leaning both ways in this game. But yeah, I would trust Minshew and the Colts coaching experience more than I would trust what the Texans have going on there. Texans, it's going to be a bit of a new thing for Stroud to be in a game that's at this level, a playoff atmosphere, and on the road. So will that detract from what the Texans are trying to do? Maybe. We'll see about that. Just going over some of these playoff scenarios, I guess, real quick. I don't know if I want to really break down every single one of these games because it's really tough to do. But the Dallas Cowboys, I believe, if they beat Washington on the road, they will win the NFC East. So the Eagles need to win the NFC East and need the Cowboys to lose if they're going to win the NFC East. And the Eagles are at the Giants. It might be a tough game, man. Looks like the market discrepancy is on the Giants, and it's gone down from 7-5. Something doesn't look right with the Eagles, man. But we're going to get like an angry Eagles team because they just got upset by Arizona last week. A really terrible upset loss for the Eagles there. Are they going to be really angry, or are we going to get like an Eagles team that's got the pressure all on them now because they really don't want to lose this division after they kind of had it in hand? It's kind of it is a big game, even though they're still going to make the playoffs. Even if they don't win their division, they'll still be the top wild card, I believe, in the NFC, but they don't really want that to happen. But on the other hand, the Giants, is this going to be like the Giants Super Bowl, man? They got Tyrod Taylor in there. Again, the Eagles had problems when the Giants brought him in 2 weeks ago, but then again, people will look at that and say the Giants gave the Eagles like all they could handle, really, which kind of is true a little bit. The Eagles did dominate that game statistically on Christmas, so I don't know. The final score was kind of misleading. And the Eagles now know that Tyrod Taylor is going to be who they're facing, so they might be able to prepare something for Tyrod Taylor this time where they couldn't, really didn't have anything prepared for the previous game because they were facing Tommy DeVito, who then, I don't know if he got hurt or if he just got pulled from the game. Tommy Cutlets, man, he's back at home having his mama make him some of that chicken parmesan over there. Tyrod Taylor's going to be in there again, but the Eagles might have something prepared for him this time. So that's a tough one to read, too. So I'm not betting on that one either. We will see what happens, man. A lot of these situations are quite crazy here. So the division there is still up for grabs. Cowboys, Eagles, whichever team doesn't win the division is, I believe, going to be the top wild card, though, because they both have really good records. In the NFC there, Rams, 49ers, the Rams, I think there's going to be some pressure on the Rams, man, because I do think that they can get into the playoffs, so they need to win. I don't know if they need to win and get some help. I don't know what their situation is, but I think they do need to win this game, and they have the tough task of having to go to the 49ers. 49ers, I think, are locked into the 1 seed, if I'm not mistaken. I think they have the 1 seed wrapped up because they won again last week, so they might be resting Brock Purdy in this one, but they're still a 4-point favorite, and it looks like the public is kind of on the Rams here, maybe knowing that it's like a must-win for the Rams. The Rams are getting points, but even so, I think it's a very tall task there with a lot of the pressure on, but the Rams do have a lot of experience in games like this with Stafford and Sean McVay there, so they do have a lot of younger players on the team too who haven't been in a situation like this, but their main guys there have, so that's the situation the Rams have going on. Their leaders there, the coach and the quarterback, definitely have done it before, so that's a tough one to read as well. Falcons, Saints, that division is up for grabs too, man. The Saints are down to like a 3-point favorite with juice from 3.5 with 84% of the tickets and 60% of the cash. So it looks like the market read is towards the Falcons there. And I should have mentioned, I guess the market read is towards the Giants in the Eagles-Giants game with 57% of tickets on the Eagles, but 51% of the cash on the Giants. So the Giants look like that kind of cash discrepancy home underdog there that the market is kind of indicating on. The market's indicating on the Falcons, though, against the Saints there. And it's indicating on the 49ers, which is just crazy if the 49ers can still cover against the Rams, who need to win the game with the 49ers backups in there. Are the 49ers that good? Maybe they are. I don't know. The Falcons Saints is a weird one because you have the Saints coming off that huge win over the Buccaneers. They needed to do that, but now they need to do it again this week against the Falcons, who got embarrassed last week against the Chicago Bears. So, but either way you look at it, both of these teams have to show up in this game because the horrible NFC South is up for grabs here, and they might be. Are they going to be scoreboard watching? Because I think they're playing at the same time as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so that's an interesting situation there. They might be scoreboard watching because the Buccaneers at the Panthers there. Buccaneers 4.5-point favorite on the road. 83% of the tickets on them, and 70% of the cash on. So the Buccaneers look like a public favorite there, and the Buccaneers might get caught, man. It's possible they get caught by the Panthers, even though you might say, well, the Panthers, they're tanking, man, for the first draft pick. Are they really, though? They got Bryce Young there. I think they know that Bryce Young is the guy. I think the Panthers, they might want to beat the Buccaneers, man. When division foes like this can spoil the party for a team that they really don't like, they try to do that. So, and it's a sketchy-looking line that looks way too easy to take the Buccaneers, even though they didn't play well last week. Everybody's thinking, the Buccaneers have this division wrapped up. They were thinking that last week, too. They're still, I believe, sitting on top of the division very slightly with the same record, I believe, as the Saints now, but with the tiebreaker there. And with the Falcons just one game behind them. The pressure is on for the Buccaneers, and for being a road favorite like that, I would probably lean against the Buccaneers in that one. And then Falcons, Saints, I do lean to the Falcons there because of what we saw out of these teams last week. But then again, it is a playoff situation. And the reason I can't quite, this was close to a play for me betting on the Falcons, but I can't quite get there with it because, and I was somewhat close to jumping on the Panthers, too, just to play spoiler, but I don't think it's enough, even though the Panthers looked really bad last week against the Jaguars. The Buccaneers didn't play well last week either against the Saints, but that was kind of being sent crashing down to earth a little bit there for the Buccaneers. Falcons, Saints. Falcons got totally embarrassed last week. Saints coming off a huge win, but can the Saints do it again? The Falcons, I think they probably kind of think that they're out of it at this point, even though they do have a chance to win. I think they need to win this game. They need the Buccaneers to lose, so they need some help there. So you might see a looser game out of the Falcons here because the Saints are right on the cusp there. And might expect to win this game and are the favorite at home. So the pressure might be more on the Saints than on the Falcons here. Falcons probably, I don't even know if they expected to be here where they are at this point, so I don't know. The Saints, maybe they did. I don't know. Derek Carr does not have a great track record in big games like this, but he does have the experience playing in big games like this, whereas the Falcons are going to be going with, I don't know, Taylor Heineke at quarterback. Maybe they're going to have guys out there who do not have experience playing in games on a stage like this in a playoff atmosphere on the road at the Superdome. So it's going to be a tough environment for the Falcons to walk into there. Although I do lean towards them to cover the number just because of what we saw last week and not trusting Derek Carr. It's a tough read, man. It is definitely a tough read. Browns, Bengals. I almost wanted to play the Bengals here, but the Bengals are up to a 7-point favorite now. They would have been 1, I guess, if the teams had something to play for here. They're up to 7 now, but it looks like 72% of the tickets on the Bengals and 55% of the cash back on the Browns. So maybe the line has just gone too far on the Bengals. I don't know, but the Browns, they're locked into whatever spot they're in the AFC there. I think are they the 2, the 3? I don't know where they are, but no, they're a wild card. Excuse me. Yeah, that's why they're locked in. The Ravens have won that division, of course. So the Ravens are the one. The Browns are locked into the 5. Excuse me. They're locked into the top wild card spot. Yeah, so the Browns are the 5. They do have a really good record, but it just so happens that they're in the division with the other best record in the AFC. So the Browns are locked into the 5. So I think they're going to be playing DTR quarterback. That just looks like a recipe for not a very good game out of the Browns here. And the Browns, man, they're coming off kind of another big win, although they have extra time off because it was on Thursday. They beat the Jets. It's kind of like whatever, but they pretty much sealed where they're going to be in the playoffs with that win, at least. And they might be looking ahead to the playoffs now. Even though the Browns are resting guys and the line looks kind of suspicious because the Bengals are such a heavy favorite now. People kind of know the Browns are resting guys, though. And the Bengals are coming off a really tough loss against the Chiefs. That, I think, was the dream crusher for the Bengals. I think that was the loss that finally clinched the Bengals elimination. So are we going to get a full effort out of the Bengals here? I'm not so sure. I mean, maybe they do want to beat the Browns, and maybe Jake Browning, who's going to be in there, he wants to play a good game here to finish the season after not so good of a performance the last couple weeks. Browning might have something to show there, so he might get up for that game. So it's a really, really tough one to read, though, in that one. So there's no way I can get there with that, even though it almost looks too easy to come back and take the Browns, because we know the Browns' defense is good. I don't know how many other defensive starters are even playing in this game, but do you want to really lay a touchdown against the Browns, even if the Browns are resting guys? Possibly not. Still got the Jim Schwartz defense there, but how motivated are they going to really be in this game? But it's also a game with a really low total, so it's not really a game where you want to really lay points, even though I said that on that Thursday night game too. But will the Bengals want to show up and try to get rid of that sour taste in their mouth? Maybe, but that Chiefs game was a pretty difficult one, man. They had chances to win that game and stay alive and didn't do it, so it's a tough spot for the Bengals too. So I just can't do it there. Bears, Packers. I think the Packers, if the Packers win, I think they're going to remain in the last playoff spot, basically. So I think if they win, they're in the playoffs, which is crazy to think about. Although I think it's basically win, you're in, you lose, you're out, pretty much. I think for the Packers here. So I think if they lose, I think they need multiple other teams to lose to still make it. So it's like a must win for the Packers. They're up from 2 to 3. Got 53% of the tickets and 51% of the cash on the Bears. So somehow the Bears are getting a bit of the public action there. I almost wanted to take the Bears here, but looking at the market, I'm not so sure that I can do that, because I think the pressure is all on the Packers here. And Jordan Love is in there now. He has not been on a stage as big as this yet, a playoff atmosphere like this. Well, it's a playoff atmosphere, at least on the Packers side, but the Bears really have nothing to play for, except I think the Bears probably would want nothing more than to knock their rival, the Packers, out of the playoffs, man. I think the Bears do want to do that, and I think the Packers wrecked the Bears in Chicago in week 1 of this season. So the Bears might remember that a little bit too and maybe want some revenge there. Like, hey, you came into our house and destroyed us to open the season. Well, we'll come into your house and beat you to end your season and knock you out of the playoffs. How about that? So I do think the Bears are going to be motivated and want to do that. Packers, I don't know. Is it going to be too much pressure for them to handle? I kind of want to lean to the Bears in this one a little bit, even though the market looks against it. We'll have to see how the market shapes up there. So I'm just not playing the game. I'm just going to stay off of that game. Can't quite get there with that one. And then it looks like I said I wasn't going to talk about all these games, and I guess I am. Oh, well, I'm not that deep into this video yet. And you probably know what games I'm going to have actual plays on, because I haven't talked about them yet. And I've kind of I've skirted the issue, kind of skipped around them. You got Seahawks, Cardinals. Seahawks down from 3.5 to 3 with 53% of the tickets on the Seahawks, but 73% of the cash on the Cardinals. The market is seemingly strongly indicating on the Cardinals here. It looks like the Cardinals, yeah, I mean, they might want to show up and spoil it for the Seahawks too, because I think if the Seahawks lose, they're going to not make the playoffs. I think they need to win, and they might need some extra help too, potentially. I think that's the case with the Seahawks. They need to win, and they need help. But is the pressure going to be on the Seahawks now? They're a road favorite here, laying points. I don't know, man, because on the other hand, yeah, maybe the pressure will be a lot there. I don't know if Geno Smith has been at quite this stage before, on the cusp of trying to make the playoffs. Have they made the playoffs with him before? I'm not even sure. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they have. I don't know. It seems like he's been around long enough that that's happened, and the Seahawks have been a good enough team for that long that maybe it's happened, but maybe I'm wrong about that. But the Seahawks looked so bad last week against the Steelers, which is another reason why I kind of don't love the Steelers in their game against the Ravens, even though I do kind of have to lean that way. The Steelers, that win just looked way too good against the Seahawks, and I think a lot of people didn't really expect the Steelers to be able to do that. But on the other side there, the Seahawks looked really bad in that game, and the Cardinals looked really good going into Philly and upsetting the Eagles as huge underdogs. So how much do the Cardinals have left in the tank, man? Are they going to run out of steam before this game is over? Maybe. That's why I can't quite do it with the Cardinals there, even though it looks like the market is strongly indicating on them. They're in a spot where they might run out of gas because they're coming off such a huge upset, even though I think they'll get up for this game too and want to spoil the party for the Seahawks here because they're division rivals there. So, and the Cardinals, I think, are just being undervalued because of their bad early season performance. So that was when they didn't have Kyler Murray and they were missing James Conner for a bit. It's a different team with those guys in there, man. Could be tough. Tough game for the Seahawks here, man. We'll see what happens with that. And then the Jaguars are at Tennessee. Jaguars laying 3.5 on the road. Tennessee has 57% of tickets and 70% of the cash on. It looks like the public still doesn't like what they've seen out of the Jaguars recently, even though they finally won a game last week. It was against the Panthers, but they did blow them out, and I think they shut them out, I want to say, and that was a game the Jaguars really needed, because if they did not get that, they were going to be looking at falling out of the playoffs entirely after they were leading this division the whole time. They were in the playoffs last year. So they do have Trevor Lawrence. They do have the experience here winning some games like this. They had that huge comeback against the Chargers last year in that ridiculous playoff game that everybody remembers. So the Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence has a little bit of that experience under his belt now in games like this, games that are like must-win situations, basically. But it looks like the market is kind of indicating on the Titans here, and I do think the Titans might want to show up and spoil the party for the Jaguars, man. As I keep saying with a lot of these teams are going to want to play spoiler here. So I think that might be the case with the Titans there because they're eliminated. They might want to get in there and knock the Jaguars out of the playoffs because why not? Mike Vrabel, great coach, might have some things up his sleeve there. We'll see. Who knows? We'll see what happens there. I guess I should have mentioned that for Cowboys Commanders. I didn't really talk about that game, but the Commanders, I think Ron Rivera, I think it'll be his last game. So I think it'll depend. That game will depend whether or not the players like Rivera enough or not, whether they're going to really show up and try to like cover that number or not. And they did get embarrassed by the Cowboys on that Thanksgiving game, but that game was a lot closer towards the end of the third quarter. The Commanders were still like in that game, and it totally unraveled late in the game. So I don't know. Will the Commanders show up and maybe want to get a little bit of revenge there and try to play slow there? I expect Dallas to win. It's gigantic favorites there. Washington's been so bad recently, but will Ron Rivera be pulling out the stops there and what's probably his last game as coach there? And will the Commanders want to play for him? That's a tough question to answer. It remains to be seen. But back to the Titans here. Yeah, Mike Vrabel, he might have some tricks up his sleeve as well there in a game where the Titans can just play loose and they have nothing to play for. I don't even know who the Titans quarterback is going to be in that game. I don't know if it matters that much really as far as like the side is concerned there. The Jaguars, pressure is going to be on them, man. We've seen that they can handle some of the big pressure like that, like in that playoff game last year, but we will see what happens there. I don't like that game either, really, so we'll see what happens there. Vikings-Lions has playoff. I'm just skipping the games that don't have playoff implications. Whatever. Screw those games. Vikings-Lions. Vikings can somehow still make the playoffs, man. Even though I think they probably know that they're out of it at this point. I think they just think that they just probably be extremely surprised and happy if they made the playoffs because they need to win, and I think they need 3 different teams to lose to get in. I think they need to win, and they need Green Bay to lose. They need the Saints to lose maybe, and they might need the Buccaneers to lose, something like that, which is somehow all of that is actually possible. That can actually those teams. I think I actually kind of lean against all of those teams in those games, so it's actually possible that the Vikings somehow sneak into the playoffs after what we've seen from them recently. That would be one of the most insane things that we would see if that happened on Sunday. But I don't know if it will, but the Lions are down from 5.5 to 3, 69% of the tickets on, 72% of the cash on. So it looks like Lions have the cash discrepancy. I don't know about that. We know they're probably going to be the public team, but the Lions, they got to be resting some players, right? Because I think they're not totally locked into the 3 seed, but I think they're they might as well be locked into the 3 seed at this point because I don't think they can overtake the 49ers or the Cowboys. I think maybe if they win and the Cowboys lose and the Eagles win, then the Lions would have the tiebreaker against the Eagles and somehow sneak into the 2 seed. I don't know how that works. I think the Lions are effectively locked into the 3, though. So this line seems to be indicating they might be resting some guys here because they're basically locked into the 3. That might be the case here. We saw the Vikings. They did play tough against the Lions, even though the Lions statistically outplayed them more than what that final score looked like a couple weeks ago there. Will the Vikings want revenge? Will the Lions kind of remember that game and actually show up for this one? I'm not so sure about that because the Lions might be looking ahead to bigger things at this point, looking ahead to the playoffs. The Lions might be in a bit of a hangover spot after what we saw happen to them against the Cowboys, too. I don't know if that's going to put them in an angry mood or if it's going to make them a little bit like downtrodden with that weird like reffing decision at the end of the game, where I think what happened there was that the Lions were saying that 70 was eligible on like every play during the game. So the refs kind of assumed that was going to be the case against. The refs made that mistake of making that assumption. So the refs probably are more at fault than the players there, but the Lions didn't really make it clear that, hey, we're not doing that this time. We're making 68 eligible. So 70 was listed as eligible to like the Dallas Cowboys and to the like audience and the players on the field or whatever. So if the Cowboys thought that 68 was the eligible receiver, they would have covered him, man. I mean, that's the case there. So I don't know. It's just a bizarre play, and it's just unfortunate that it had such an impact on the game there, like kind of seemingly. So I don't know. I don't know how that's going to affect the Lions' mental state, but that was a big game for them, though, and they do also have the playoffs to look ahead to here already. So the Vikings, will they play like a loose game, probably not thinking about their playoff chances and thinking that they're essentially out of it, because they essentially are, even though they have that wild outside chance of making it? Will they show up loose and play? Maybe. I don't know. I don't even know who the Vikings are starting in this game. They might be going back to Nick Mullins because Jaron Hall was so bad last week, and that's the other thing. The Lions looked pretty good against the Cowboys last week, playing a really competitive game, and a lot of people think they should have won that game. Vikings looked as bad as you could look on the primetime game, man. So nobody's going to want anything to do with the Vikings here. So that would have me kind of leaning to the Vikings here, because the Lions really have almost nothing to play for, and you could argue maybe the Vikings don't have that much to play for either, but the Vikings, I think they kind of want to beat the Lions here, man, because the Lions have been winning the division all year, and the Vikings were that close to beating them in that other game. I don't know if that's going to cause the Lions to be focused because, hey, this Vikings team played well against us last time. I don't know. I think the Lions might just, at this point, be looking ahead to the playoffs. So I think the Vikings are going to want to put in a better performance here. So that's the way I look at that game. What are the games I'm actually on? Let's get to those. Hey, my actual plays. Before we got here, this video is still actually not going to be that long, even though I've broken down almost all the games, more than I usually do even, I think. So we're getting efficient here. First game I'm going to be on is, I'm already on it, on the LA Chargers -2.5, which unfortunately this line was like 1.5 for a little while, and it started creeping up, and I'm like, I got to get this before it hits the 3. So I'm sorry I'm giving out, this is week 18, man. I'm sorry I'm giving out these games even just like a day late. You kind of miss like some of these numbers. I apologize. I still like the Chargers side here, and if you can find a way to play the money line, maybe even lay a 3. I don't know if I'd be totally opposed to laying the 3 here, but I like the Chargers here. The Chiefs are down from, the Chargers are up from 1.5 point favorite to a 3.5 point favorite. So you can see the line moving on the Chargers, and it is reverse line movement against the Chiefs. So I like to see the reverse line movement. I like these week 18 lines where it seems like the public is just still on the team that they know is the better team, even though that team has nothing to play for and is now resting players because the other team, is the Chargers in this case, have looked so bad recently. So I do like that aspect of it, and the market is indicating on the Chargers. 59% of the tickets on the Chiefs, 56% of the cash on. So the Chiefs are still the public now road underdog, and the cash discrepancy is against them. Hopefully that doesn't change before Sunday, and the Chargers have the line moving towards them. But I did take a line that's better than what the number is right now at 2.5. It's at 3.5 with reduced juice right now on the Chargers. So I think it might be possible you can get a 3, or maybe if you can get like a money line. I don't know if this -190 money line is what I want to do, but if you can find like a lower money line than that might be the way you want to play this Chargers game if you want to play the Chargers. I lean to the Chargers side, man, and I like it. The Chargers have looked awful, man. Like they could not have looked worse last week. That's what people are going to remember. They looked horrible against Denver, and it was a game where neither team really had anything to play for anymore. But against a Denver team who has nothing to play for, you're the Chargers, and you scored no touchdowns in the game. It was just awful for the Chargers. They had 6 points until like really late in the game, and they just kept failing to score. They missed a field goal, I think, near the end as well. And somehow the Broncos wound up covering that number. I don't even know how. Just an awful performance. But think about what the Chargers did, man. They were coming off a huge performance against Buffalo, where I was on the Chargers because the Chargers had played a horrific game on the Thursday night game the week before. They'd given up 63 to Vegas, and then they got Buffalo off of that huge win that Buffalo had against Dallas, I believe. So it was a really good spot to play the Chargers there. And Buffalo had New England and Miami left to look ahead to, too. So Buffalo almost got caught there. The Chargers put in a really good effort there. But then I think the Chargers are a little bit hungover after that and didn't play well. Tough spot going into elevation, man. And the Chargers really didn't play well. Nobody's going to want the Chargers here. But, I mean, they looked awful. But really, like, the Chiefs, like, what are the public is still going to be playing the Chiefs. So the Chiefs have nothing to play for now because I think because the Chiefs had some of those losses down the stretch, the Chiefs are locked in, I believe, to the 3 seed in the AFC now because I think the winner of the AFC East is going to get the 2 seed, and then of course, the Ravens have the 1 locked up. Chiefs, I think, are locked into the 3 seed, so they're resting their players, man, and I think they're in a sandwich spot. So Mahomes is not playing in this game. And, of course, he is the guy. He is like their entire offense. He's the guy that runs the offense. And they're not playing him, and they're playing Blaine Gabbert, who I don't know when the last time he has played. I don't know what the last teams he's played for are because he wasn't Kansas City's backup last year. Chad Henne was the backup. And Henne looked good when he came in when Mahomes got injured there. Henne had that nice drive against Jacksonville there. Yeah, but how about a game where Kansas City has nothing to play for? They're putting Blaine Gabbert in there, who I don't know how long he's even been on KC or how well he knows the system, and it's a game that doesn't matter to them at all. And is he going to be able to sustain a good performance for an entire game? I'm thinking probably not. And they have to go on the road to LA here to do it. I think the Chiefs, they don't have anything to really play for, man. I just think that the Chiefs might just kind of just not care about this game that much. They have nothing to play for. They're locked in. The Chargers at least have something to play for with having such an awful game last week. And maybe the Chargers will get up for their new coach because Brandon Staley's out of there, man. And that sparked the team in that first game. That was another reason I was on them against Buffalo. A huge reason, actually, that Brandon Staley was fired. He was gone. Chargers got fired up for their new coach. I think they still like the coaches in there, even if he's only in there on an interim basis. I think they still like him. They're going to want to play for him. The Kansas City Chiefs are coming in, man, and it's your last game of the season. You got something to play for. You got some pride to play for here. I think it would feel pretty good to beat the Chiefs, even if they're not playing Patrick Mahomes in this game. I think the Chiefs are going to show up for this one. Easton Stick, he's been really inconsistent, but he hasn't been that bad, really. He's been a decent quarterback out there in those last few games, I would say, even though the final scores looked pretty bad in a couple of those games. He's not really that bad. His worst game was that last one against Denver for sure, but I think he might be able to do something. I think the Chargers will show up. They'll want to play. They still have those other components of their offense. Austin Eckler, I think Keenan Allen's in there. They still got good offensive players, man. I think against the Chiefs defense that might not be playing at their most intense, I think we might see the Chargers be able to do something here and be able to get out of here with a win. So I like it, man. And the Chiefs, I think it's a sandwich spot for the Chiefs, man. Looking at all the teams that are resting starters this week, I think it's the best play, I think, is to go against the Chiefs here. And it's kind of my favorite play of the week, really. The Chiefs had a big win last week against the Bengals, man. That Bengals, even though it wasn't Joe Burrow in there, that's become like a big rivalry. Chiefs-Bengals. The Chiefs wanted that game. They won that game. They didn't do it in great fashion, really. It was kind of ugly fashion, but they won a big game against the Bengals, regardless of how you look at it. And up next week, they're going to have their first playoff game, and they'll be hosting a playoff game, and they have to go to L.A. in between those two. I don't know. And are their players going to be a little bit distracted by what there might be to do out there in L.A. when they have a game that doesn't really mean anything? Maybe. I don't know. Does it become like one of those college football bowl games where the players just don't really assign any meaning to the game? They kind of just get distracted by what the city has to offer? Possibly. Who knows? Especially when it's getting like cold out now in the Kansas City area. I assume that it is. Getting into wintertime, they get to go to L.A., maybe take a little bit of a vacation there. So I think everything about the spot, I think lines up nicely on a play on the Chargers, so that's what I'm doing there. Everything I just said, I don't know if I missed anything there, but yeah, it's a sandwich spot for the Chiefs is what I was just saying. Big win that they're coming off of against the Bengals. They're now locked into their playoff spot, and they got that first playoff game to look ahead to, so they might already have one eye looking ahead to that. I believe they already beat the Chargers once, and it was kind of a tough game. A decent performance of the Chargers in that game, I think, but I think it was back when Justin Herbert was still there playing for the Chargers, so I don't know. The Chiefs might think, well, we already also beat the Chargers with Herbert, so it's kind of like whatever. Who cares? Now they're playing Easton Stick. I'm on the Chargers. I like it. That's play number 1. And then play number 2, you probably know what it is because I haven't talked about the other primetime game yet either, and I always talk about the primetime games. Play number 2, you know what it is. Well, do you know what it is? You know what game it is, but I'm on the Buffalo Bills. I just have to do it, man. There are reasons for it. Even though I know there are some professionals that think there's value on the Dolphins and like the Dolphins here and think that they're like huge like cluster injury problems undervaluing them. I just don't really think so. I'm not so sure about that. This looks like the line has gone from Buffalo a +1.5 up to 2.5 point favorite with juice. I think you can still find the 2.5s out there. I said the line might be gone. I'm not sure that it is. I think you might be able to still find 2.5s hopefully out there without the extra juice, although maybe laying the 2.5 with juice is still better than like laying a 3, I guess. Bills have 70% of the cash and 53% of the tickets. So they do have the cash discrepancy on them. Excuse me. So it does look like the public, even though the public action is just slightly on the Bills, they're almost a 50-50 split. It looks like the cash is way more significantly on the Bills. So I think maybe more of the more substantial money, the money that means something, the professionals and whatever, even though I know some who are not on the Bills here, who are on the other side, but maybe more of them are driving this line up on the Bills. I think the injuries for the Dolphins are all, and recency are also kind of factoring in there, driving the lineup, but I like the Bills for a bunch of reasons here, man. The Dolphins, I mean, yeah, both teams looked ugly last week, so there is that. So the Dolphins looked ugly last week, really ugly. I mean, you can't look much worse than losing 56-19 to the Baltimore Ravens. That game just got kind of out of hand. It was a lot of turnovers. The Dolphins had a lot of injuries that happened in that game, man, and that's going to kind of factor into what I'm talking about in this game here. So is it going to be a bounce back situation for the Dolphins because of that really ugly loss, or was that kind of like a crashing down to earth scenario? Because when you get like emotionally up for a big game, it is a big game against the Baltimore Ravens, and the Baltimore Ravens like really send you crashing down to earth and show you like we are the better team here. And I unfortunately was on the Dolphins in that one. That was just awful. Does that like kind of like put you in like a downtrodden mode in the next game? Maybe, even though this game, it means something, and the Dolphins are 7-1 at home, which is a tough thing to duck here. But as I've been saying all season, man, the Dolphins, they have not played a very strong schedule this year. And yeah, you could say, yeah, well, they beat Dallas at home. Yeah, but Dallas made some mistakes in that game. That opening drive where you had Tony Pollard or whatever kind of whirlwind around and somehow not get the ball into the end zone there, and then they fumbled it over on the next play. That went from Dallas having a 7-0 lead to start the game into a 0-0 game, and the Dolphins scoring 3, and then that really kind of set the tone and changed that game a lot, and Dallas still had the lead right near the end of that game and almost won that game. So I don't know if you can take that much away from the Dolphins having won that, although, yeah, the Dolphins, I guess, got over the hump and finally beat a good team, but can the Dolphins continue to do that? And, yeah, the division is on the line here, but the Dolphins, they're not going to miss the playoffs, and they're already in the playoffs, so if they lose this game, they'll be a wild card, which they don't want that. They do want to win this division, of course, and host a playoff game. I think they would love to do that, but does that mean that the motivation is a little bit less on Miami? Maybe, even though, yeah, they definitely still want to win the division. But Buffalo has some, like, kind of wild motivational discrepancies here. Buffalo, they could go from anywhere from the 2 seed. If they win this game, they win the AFC East and get the 2 seed, which is crazy thinking about where the Bills were a few weeks ago. And everybody was saying, well, the Bills were, like, multiple games behind the Dolphins, like the Bills are going to be totally out of it. So it almost seems like it's like almost like fate, even though I don't want to say that at all. And I hate like when things look like fate like this. I tend to not want to be on them. The Bills came back from like, I don't know, multiple games behind the Dolphins to now being in a situation where if they win this game, they'll have beaten Miami both times, and they'll actually take the division because they'll have the same record, and the Bills will actually get out of there with the division, and they'll be the 2 seed. Whereas if the Bills lose, I think they could fall all the way down to out of the playoffs, I think, entirely. I think if the Bills lose this game, and I think if Pittsburgh wins, or I think maybe Jacksonville, there are a couple of situations there, then the Bills would actually be out of the playoffs completely. So, yeah, it's a must-win for the Bills because of that as well. Because I don't know if I've seen like a discrepancy that much where a team can be the 2 seed if one result happens, but if the other result happens, they could be out of the playoffs completely. Or I think there's a situation where they is there a situation where they could still be a wild card? I think maybe there is too. If they lose and all those other teams also lose, I think the Bills might still get in as a wild card too. It's so crazy, man. But it is a must win because one of those teams is probably going to win their game there. So effectively, it is a must win for the Bills here. But the Bills are coming off a bad game as well. You talk about Miami having a bad game. Well, Buffalo, their game wasn't very good either against New England. The Bills did not put up a very good performance. The final score was close, and the game statistically was pretty close. The Bills should have blown them out just because New England had 4 turnovers in that game, but the Bills somehow couldn't. They just could not really run away with the game there, even though they were up 13, I think, multiple times in that game. And New England had one of their touchdowns was on, I think, a kick return. I think it was a kick return touchdown. That might have been New England's only or it was one of 2 touchdowns they had in the game. So New England really didn't do much on offense in that game, but their defense really kind of checked down the Bills, especially considering New England had 4 turnovers in that game. The Bills really did not do well in that game. 4 turnovers. If you have a +3 turnover margin like that, yeah, against New England, you probably should be winning that game by a few scores there, and that's not what happened. But the Bills got out of there with a win. Were they looking ahead to this? I don't know, because the Bills, I think, wanted revenge on New England because New England beat them earlier in the season. That was one of the losses that was the reason why Buffalo wasn't in the driver's seat in the AFC East. So I think they wanted to win that game. It's just, I don't know, Belichick, tricky coach. New England's got a pretty good defense, so who knows, but maybe that'll focus the Bills a bit here, but of course they're going to be focused anyway because this is a game that they have to win this game. And yeah, they're laying points, but where I got it, it's under a touchdown. So at least there's that aspect of it where you're still just kind of playing them to just win the game. So when it's a must win and they don't really need to cover a number and they just need to win, I still like that aspect of it. And Buffalo they've been in games like this plenty of times, and they have a lot of experience at this point. They've been in playoff games multiple times. They've won playoff games. They haven't gotten to the big show yet. They've not gotten to the conference championship yet, but they've won this division repeatedly. They've been in the playoffs repeatedly, won playoff games multiple times. Josh Allen, he's got the experience. A lot of these guys on the team have the experience. The coaching staff has the experience. So I think the experience is a big factor here as well. Miami doesn't quite have that. I mean, I don't know if has Tua been in a game that's a playoff atmosphere like this before, in a playoff game before? I don't know, because when Miami played the Bills last year in the playoffs, yeah, I mean, the Bills did eliminate them from the playoffs last year, but this is also effectively an elimination game, so I think that motivation can kind of be thrown out, because of course both these teams are going to be motivated anyway. Like, you don't need to look back and say, hey, the Bills knocked us out of the playoffs last year to be motivated to win this game against the Bills here, so... But there is that. I mean, that does remain a fact as well. But that was also the Dolphins without Tua, and without Tua, they did play pretty well. But does that mean that Tua is kind of lacking that like big game experience a little bit because he wasn't in that game? I think maybe. I think the experience edge certainly goes to Buffalo here, and I think that's big in a playoff atmosphere like this. And Buffalo's having to go on the road here, but Buffalo, they've done pretty well at Miami, really. I think the only game that Buffalo lost at Miami in the Josh Allen era, I think, was the early season game they played at Miami last year. It was really hot in Miami, and the Bills kind of got caught there. And I think I might have been on Miami in that game. People didn't expect didn't expect Miami to be able to do anything in that game. Miami, we didn't know if Miami was really that good back then either. So I do remember that, but I think it was really hot there. But now it'll be a nice like winter temperature in Miami this time. I'm sure it'll be like probably 60s, 70s in Miami this time instead of, well, it probably says here somewhere. 69. Yeah, there you go. 69. Giggity. Yeah, so nice. So yeah, it'll be a better atmosphere, not too hot for the Bills to be down there. Good temperature, good football weather, I think, for this game, and a primetime game. So it'll be cool, a little bit cooler at night too. So I think that's good. So I like all of that for the Bills. All of that is good for the Bills. But on the other side, the Dolphins, they're kind of in chaos, man. Even though, yeah, that's affecting this line a little bit, but I'm not sure that it's affecting this line enough with how much is going on with the Dolphins here, even though there are a lot of question marks too. So you have Tua injured his shoulder last week in the Ravens game. He's going to play, but is his shoulder going to be 100%? I'm not so sure about that. So you have that to deal with. So Tua might not be 100%. So that might be affecting a little bit. And of course, I rolled with Kansas City throughout the playoffs last year against Cincinnati and in the Super Bowl, thinking that people were undervaluing them because of the Mahomes ankle injury. I'm not sure that it's the same type of situation because Mahomes is an experienced guy, man. He'd been there, done all that before. The Dolphins have not been there and done that before, really. So I don't know. I don't know how Tua's shoulder injury is going to be. And then you got other stuff going on that's just weird, man. Weird question marks. Raheem Mostert got injured, and Jalen Waddle has been injured, I think, for 2 games now. And we don't know if either of them are going to play. Neither of them have practiced yet. They didn't practice today, so those are going to be come up to game time decisions, and they might wind up both not playing in this game, and maybe they won't be 100% if they do play. So Mostert and Waddle, they're banged up at the very least. Tua will play, but he is banged up. You might see either Mostert or Waddle potentially not even play in this game, so who knows about that. Tyreek Hill, there's some weird stuff going on with Tyreek Hill, man. We're seeing him in a walking boot, which is kind of weird. So what's going on? Is he still injured? Even though I know he played the last couple games. He got injured and missed 1 game a few weeks ago, and he looked fine coming out of that injury. He'll probably be fine because he is Tyreek Hill, but he's in a walking boot, so he might look like he's not 100%. But why do we know that he's in a walking boot? Oh, because he made the headlines because his house caught on fire. So there might be that other distraction angle going on there. Is Tyreek Hill going to be a little bit distracted because one of his many children that we don't know about, that Hard Knocks doesn't tell you about, he's got 3 children this year born to 3 different women, I think, or something like that. So one of those children, I don't know which, one of Tyreek Hill's bastard children, what a bastard, lit Tyreek Hill's house on fire. So we have that going on as well. The Hill house fire distraction angle coming into play in this game. It's an angle you love to look for in the NFL, man. The house fire, your bastard child lighting your house on fire angle. We got that going on there as well, so I don't know if that's going to be an added distraction. A lot of stuff going on. And then Miami, their defense is very injured, man. I mean, I keep mentioning it. They lost some guys earlier in the season, and yeah, the replacements have played pretty admirably on the defense, I would say, but they haven't played too many offenses that really strike fear in teams, really. They've been playing teams like the Jets multiple times, Washington, whatever. They played one good offense, which was Dallas, but I think that was a game where it was kind of like a playoff type of game where it was kind of feeling each other out early. Unfamiliar territory for Dallas. This is not unfamiliar territory for the Bills playing Miami. They play Miami a lot. They know Miami. They know how to scheme against Miami. They already crushed Miami once this year, although that fact kind of makes me not want to be on the Bills because the Bills wrecked Miami so bad earlier this season. I was on the Bills, and that was a bad spot for Miami coming off putting up a 70 spot against Denver. Everybody loved Miami at that point, loved Miami's offense. I think the public still likes Miami a little bit here and thinks Buffalo's been playing a bit uglier than Miami has, and they're probably not going to dock Miami that much for losing to the Ravens, even though it was a really bad-looking loss. They saw the Ravens wreck San Francisco before that, so everybody thinks the Ravens are very, very good. So I don't think the public is really going to downgrade the Dolphins much in their mind because of that. But now the Dolphins have more injuries on defense to worry about. They lost Bradley Chubb in that game last week, too, and I think he's the captain of their defense. He's one of their best defensive players, linebacker there. All of that, the Dolphins, they have a lot of chaotic things going on there, man, with the Dolphins. I don't know, man. Are they unraveling a little bit? I don't know. Is it a situation where that's going to lead us to having value actually on the Dolphins? I just don't see it, man. I got to go with the experience here. I got to go with the team that actually needs to win the game to even advance, whereas the Dolphins will still be in the playoffs even if they don't win, even though they do need it to win the division. But the Bills have a little bit more motivation there. They have the experience edge, and they have the edge as far as like what the like injury concerns are that are going on. That is like really going against the Dolphins here as well. And some of it's factored into the line, but is it being factored in enough where you're still in a situation where it's just pick the winner basically in this game, which is what it would have been anyway before that. So, but it is crossing the threshold of 3. So I would not want to lay 3 or more with the Bills here, but that's the way I look at those games, man. Week 18, and the video's finally gone long here. All right. So my 2 plays, only 2 plays. Week 18, really hard to gauge. Just total chaos, really. The plays that I actually like, the Chargers -2.5, but it is up through the 3 now, unfortunately. You might still be able to find some creative ways to play the Chargers in that game, though. I'm sorry I did not put out this video like last night where you still could get these numbers. Buffalo -2.5, the other one. I think you can still get the Buffalo number at 2.5 potentially there. I think that you might still be able to find some scragglers, some stray numbers there. So that's going to do it for me, man. It's been a long season. I'll probably still do these videos through the playoffs as well. So it's going to do it for me. I'm Tower Gang Toad. Follow me on Twitter for talking about sports, talking about politics, a bunch of shit posting, just random jokes and what. I don't even know what I do at this point. I just shit post and just say random shit that is probably just shit. I don't even know what I'm doing at this point, man. And you can follow the Tower Gang Podcast, which is my massively offensive comedy podcast that I do with a group of other guys. We do the most offensive comedy on the planet, man. It's a real fun time. We had another ridiculous episode last night, which should be up on Spotify already. And I'm going to be getting it up elsewhere shortly as well. Follow the Tower Gang Podcast wherever you can find us, wherever we're still alive and not nuked yet. If you like really seriously offensive comedy, real comedy, balls to the wall, which is hard to find nowadays anywhere. So, and follow the guys over at flapper.net, FLAPPR.net, the purveyors of the world's finest smut blog. They talk about sports, they talk about politics, they do some comedy, and they talk about slutty women or just hot women in general. So we have a lot in common, myself and the guys over at Flapper there. Have a good night, man. It's getting late, not as late as I usually do these videos, though, so I'm still feeling pretty good right now. Peace out, man.